thank you all for coming. So, our speaker this morning is Jeanie Langford, and you all know how talented she is. Is this on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, let's get on with this. Jeanie Lenore Langford was born in Narrows, Virginia, and has lived in Hopewell, Virginia since the age of 3. She graduated from Hopewell High School and attended the College of William and Mary, where she focused her studies on history. Ms. Langford is employed by the Appomattox Regional Library System, which serves the city of Hopewell and the counties of Prince George and Dinwiddie. She is the assistant librarian and archivist for the Ann K. and Preston H. Leake Local History and Genealogy Room, located in the headquarters building of the Appomattox Regional Library System. Ms. Langford is certified in museum management, having graduated on March 11, 2013, from the Virginia Museum Association's program. She is now pursuing an advanced certification. We all know how talented Jeanie is. She's a walking encyclopedia of Hopewell history. So let's all give her a warm welcome.
Thank you, Susan. Well, it is always great to be back. And it's my pleasure and honor to be here with you all. I enjoy it so much kicking off this program. Just wanted to let you know that the library system, we do record these, so they are available on the library's website. And for the first 2 weeks, they add on to the attendance of the program, and then they stay up. And they are available for you all to look at any time. So welcome everyone. I've been doing this lunch and lecture series since 1996. So I've been in all 3 locations. But I was asked last fall to work with Lamb Arts and do something with people from Hopewell, Prince George, and Dinwiddie who've been involved in the arts. All kinds of arts. Well, I didn't know what I was taking on because Hopewell, Prince George, and Dinwiddie, land-wise, that's a pretty big area. Population-wise, we're not as big as Dinwiddie, but we're as big as Richmond. However, I am up to over 46 people who have contributed to the arts from this area, and it's absolutely amazing. And every time I go somewhere or speak with someone, I end up with somebody new. So this is going to be a multi-part series. But thank you all for coming, and I hope you enjoy part 1. This is Shining Stars Part 1. That would be me. This first gentleman was Jimmy Bro Hayes. He was born here in Hopewell in 1943, and he came from an entire family that was very musical. The family sang at African American churches all over this area, and even as far up as some of the churches in Richmond. As a little boy, Jimmy had a tenor voice. Jimmy sang a lot at the Friendship Baptist Church with the family group over on Arlington Road, and he would attend the old Carter G. Woodson High School. Jimmy was a wonderful student and graduated with many honors from his class. But Jimmy didn't want to be a tenor all his life. So his family was very spiritual. So one night when Jimmy was about 12 years old, he said his nightly prayers, and he prayed to the good Lord, please change my voice. Well, the prayer wasn't answered instantly. So Jimmy kept waiting for the Lord to answer his prayer. And one morning, he woke up and he had what in professional circles was called a basso profundo voice, which meant Jimmy could hit the lowest notes possible. Very few singers have been blessed with that type of voice. Johnny Cash, some of the great opera stars that could drop their voice down that low and carry all the beats and be all the percussion for a group. After Jimmy graduated, he joined the Marines. He served for 2 years during the Vietnam era. Jimmy moved to New York to seek his fortune, and he became a singing elevator operator. People very much enjoyed this deep bass voice in the elevator. So up in New York on the streets, a lot of times in the neighborhoods, young people would go out and just be singing. So Jimmy was out on the street singing one day, and he heard another young man sing. And then he heard another young man sing. And then another, and another. Well, they got together, and they started singing a cappella together, just on the street corners. Well, one day, a man got off the train, and he was walking down the street in New York, and he heard these young men singing. Well, it brought him to tears. And he told them, he said, I want you to come to my garage, and I want to make a phone call, and I want you all to sing. Well, they went out and got a guitar player because they thought they might need this guitar player. Well, the guitar player didn't show up. So they did what they always did. They sang a cappella. On the other end of the line was Frank Zappa, the rocker king. Well, Frank Zappa listened to these young men sing, and then he put his wife on the phone to listen. Frank Zappa and his wife were both brought to tears by these young men, and Frank Zappa wanted to work with them on his own record label. Sounds a little strange. Frank Zappa and the a cappella group. So it began to happen. They came up with the name The Persuasions. They never used a band. Frank Zappa took them on tour with him. He even took them to Virginia Beach in the mid-60s when everything was still segregated, and put these young African-American men on the stage to sing during his rock concert in Virginia Beach, and the audience was brought to tears. They loved them so much. They stayed together throughout their entire careers. Jimmy appeared on other record albums singing the bass parts for like Dolly Parton, Loretta Lynn, some Johnny Cash's. That's how great his bass voice was. He died in New York in 2017, just before he was supposed to go on tour. The Persuasions were supposed to go on tour with the Smashing Pumpkins. That's how great these people were. There was a large funeral for Jimmy in New York, and then he was brought home to be buried in Langford Cemetery with the rest of his family. And so this is the story of Jimmy Hayes from right here in Hopewell. Jimmy always is a very handsome one right there. It's hard to believe he has that deep voice. This is someone that some of you may have known. Bosh Pritchard. And I'm not even going to try to pronounce his real first name because I know I'm going to mess it up. But he was Ken, the brother of all the Pritchard family that was here. Bosh had a beautiful singing voice and was one of the best football players that ever came out of Hopewell. They called him at VMI the man with no hips. He'd be there, then he wouldn't be there. His coach at VMI and some of his teammates said he sang all the time during practice. Sometimes it was irritating, and sometimes they couldn't imagine how a man could run that fast and sing at the same time. Bosh went into the Navy and then was drafted into the NFL, the Philadelphia Eagles. He was one of the leading backs of all time in Philadelphia. As you can see, he was extremely handsome, and he became one of the early pioneers of sports talk shows in Philadelphia. And he is partially responsible for bringing the NFL and gaining women to watch the NFL, because on his radio show, he sang. And so all the ladies listened to Bosh talk about football and croon at the same time, and they fell very much in love with the NFL. He actually wrote the song for the Miss New Jersey pageant. He recorded many country and western songs. He appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show on multiple occasions. He also was very active in the community. And this is Bosh getting his golfing scorecard checked by the future Princess of Monaco, the one and only Grace Kelly. When Bosh retired, he went into television. And the NFL was young then, and he became one of the first CBS broadcasters for football in the Philadelphia area. He was known to be very colorful and did have a tendency to sing during games. He later went on to found Telray Productions, which is kind of like, does anybody remember the wide world of sports with all the highlights? Well, this company, early in the 60s, did that so that people who hadn't seen what happened on the TV could kind of get a replay. That company still is in business, and he retired from that. He continued to live in Philadelphia, but he very often came back to Hopewell to sing with his brothers and visit the family. Do any of y'all remember the Tobacco Land chorus? When he would come back into town, he would sing with his brothers and Mr. Sober in the Tobacco Land chorus. The answer is Kathy Easterly. Kathy Easterly attended school here in Hopewell. Dr. John Eastling and Charlie Eastling were her parents. She graduated in 1972. She had starred in many productions around the area, and it started as a young child in Christine O'Laker Park's Young People's Theater that was here in town. She went to UCLA and majored in acting. She graduated and was able to get some small parts on television, and it made big news here in Hopewell that Kathy was in these different parts. But the parts that she was getting were not paying the bills. So one day she was sitting at her office job, and she picked up a magazine. We had an advertisement in it. Writers for Jeopardy. So she applied. Over 2,000 people applied for those jobs on Jeopardy. She was selected. Kathy wrote for Jeopardy for nearly 25 years. She won 13 Emmys for her work on Jeopardy. She was also one of the judges to whether the answer that was given was correct. And probably 15 years ago or so, I was watching Jeopardy. And Kathy had written an entire category on Hopewell.
Oh, wow.
Started off with a little bit about City Point, and then a little bit about the DuPont plant. And then one of the questions was, if you laid all the hot dogs that had been made at the quick lunch, how many times would they go around the earth? If you laid them end to end. Does anybody have any idea? If you laid all those quick lunch hot dogs that Roy Hauser rolled out, they would have, in her time, encircled the earth over 8 times.
Wow.
There came some time at Jeopardy where some of the writers, before this last writer's strike, went on strike. Kathy was involved in the strike. She is still a member of the Writers Guild, and she fought for writers' rights. Well, that's about the time that Jeopardy decided maybe we need some new writers. So Kathy was sort of retired. But she wrote so many questions, and I can't think of too many people who have 13 Emmy Awards. This is Lamar Giles. Lamar Giles was born in 19 1979, right here in Hopewell. Graduated from Hopewell High School. He made very good grades. He always aspired to be a writer. He won his first writing contest over at Harry James when he was in the first grade. He wrote his first novel when he started it when he was 14. He finished it when he was 18. When he graduated, he went to Old Dominion University and graduated from there. Lamar Giles is one of the most popular authors for young adults that is currently writing. He has started many foundations to have more diversity in works. He has been nominated twice for Edgar Awards. He is also nominated as a Virginia author. He now lives in Chesapeake, but he comes back. In fact, he was here fairly recently, and he visits all the schools in Hopewell, Prince George, and Dinwiddie to encourage young people to write and to get their education. These are just some more of the books that he has written, some of the awards that he has gotten, and he is a highly respected author born right here in Hopewell. Sam Bass. Sam Bass was born in Hopewell in 1961 and unfortunately passed in 2019. Sam Bass was talented from the very beginning. He had a great talent for art and drawing even as early as 2 or 3 years old. When Sam Bass was 6 years old, he remembers Southside Speedway. Well, back in the mid-60s, a lot of the big NASCAR drivers did go to Southside Speedway. And Sam's father took him over to Southside, and Donnie Allison was racing there. Well, Sam was very much into NASCAR and very much loved Donnie Allison. So here is this little bitty kid at Southside Speedway who is drawn and colored a picture. And he walks up to Donnie Allison and shows Donnie Allison the picture. Donnie Allison signs this little 6-year-old boy's picture, his artwork. Well, that started a lifetime of being involved with NASCAR. Sam Bass became the first official NASCAR artist. He is responsible for the design of the Rainbow Warrior, the famous Jeff Gordon 24. Wonderful work like this Dale Earnhardt photograph painting. And he designed the cars and the uniforms for the Legend of Ricky Bobby Talladega Nights. And they were quite beautiful and quite well done. didn't want to be. Sam had not been in the best of health for the bigger part of his life. You would think that he had become wealthy doing the NASCAR artwork, but really he hadn't. The last few years he wasn't able to do much of any artwork because he was having kidney problems. When Sam passed away, the NASCAR drivers and owners got together. They all contributed. They did a big memory thing on NASCAR about Sam and his artwork. But they all contributed to his funeral and made sure that Sam's wife would be cared for the rest of his life. That's how the NASCAR family is. And like I said, all that beautiful artwork over all those years came from the little boy that grew up right here in Hopewell. Alexandra Rose. This young lady lives in Dinwiddie. She is now 18 years old. Alexandra goes to, or was going to, Appomattox Regional Governor's School because she was an extremely talented writer. She was much moved by the activity surrounding the death of George Floyd. So she wrote a poem. And when she wrote the poem, she was only 14 years old. She read it to her mother, and her mother began to cry. Then she read it to her teacher. The poem was called Dear Young Black Child. The teacher was absolutely amazed by this poem. How many of you are familiar with the Chicken Soup books? Well, the Chicken Soup for the Teenage Soul, celebrating its 25th anniversary. And none other than Alexandra from Dinwiddie is in the new volume of the Chicken Soup for the Teenage Soul. She will be attending college, and she hopes to become a poet and a writer. And so she believes and talks with the young people. Stay focused on your dreams. No matter what the obstacles are, you can overcome them. Young lady from right out there in Dinwiddie with a whole lot of talent. Chris Durham. Chris Durham was born here in Hopewell. Chris Durham went to school with my brother Freddie. He was always extremely handsome and very talented. Chris's parents, most of you would know, ran Weston service station. And I remember as a young child going there, they always had that big German Shepherd dog, and they always talked to my daddy and were the very best of people. And Chris spent a lot of his growing up time working in the shop at West End with his dad. But Chris had a passion for acting.
Trish, is that it?
And so he traveled, and he was actually from the late 80s, mid 80s, until till 1990 on 3 soap operas at the same time. So very handsome. He's actually the only actor who has ever appeared on all of the Law and Order franchises more than once. And then there was the great Geico commercials. Chris was absolutely thrilled with this series of commercials because the marketing idea came out of a marketing firm in Richmond. So all of us around here thought for the longest time that Chris was the caveman. But actually, he wasn't. Chris was the CEO in the Geico commercial who was constantly apologizing to the cavemen. So he was very proud of this. Chris still lives in New York, but he comes down frequently to visit his parents. Chris is kind of what I would call a Renaissance man. He has authored children's books, which he, besides his acting, he's also a wildlife rehabilitator. So he writes books about his adventures with his animals. And this one we have just received at the library, and it is an excellent book for young people. So he is multi-talented. He is also an artist, and some of his work has been exhibited in different places in New York. So a very talented and special person from right here in town. Betsy Ledbetter. Some of you may remember her mother, Jeanie Ledbetter, who served on city council. Betsy graduated from Hopewell High School. She was always an extremely beautiful girl. I remember going to the old high school auditorium and seeing her in some of the plays at the school. She had a wonderful, wonderful voice. This play by David Merritt, Lily, she played Lily. When she was a senior, she got the lead role of traveling with this show. And the person who actually wrote it believed that the play was written specifically for her. That's how good she was. After high school, she went to Broadway and appeared in several musicals. And then one of the musicals went on the road, a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. It ended up playing on the stage in Hollywood, and Betsy was playing multiple roles, of Guinevere, Morgan Le Fay, etc. But she got the opportunity to perform on stage for weeks and then months traveling with the one and only Dick Van Dyke. So he was very impressed with her voice because she had a wide range, and she also was able to, which a lot of actors can't do, she played multiple characters in the play. So she was kind of like the jack of all trades for that play. She is still living in New York and appears frequently on Broadway plays and has also done some choreography for some of the plays on Broadway. Nelson Barclay. You may have never heard of him. He was born here in Hopewell in 1917 during the DuPont days. It was a large family. His father worked at the plant, and the mother was very busy watching 9 children. Nelson was the baby. They managed to stay here after the DuPont plant closed in 1918. They managed to stay here till 1922, but those were the hard times here in town. There really wasn't much work. Men were having to travel long distances to do work. So they left and they moved to New York. Nelson Barclay, his parents noticed very early on that he was exceptionally talented. So his mother also went to work to put Nelson in dance school. He became a magnificent dancer, and in the late 30s, he was on Broadway many, many times. Nelson Barclay enlisted in the Army for World War II. He was not sent overseas to fight. However, he did have a big role to play. Some of you may have heard of the Broadway production of This Is the Army. That was done on Broadway by Irving Berlin. All the proceeds went to provide entertainment for the troops. It played on Broadway to sold-out audiences for 6 months. Nelson Barclay did all the choreography for this movie and was one of the lead dancers. As soon as possible, it toured the entire country, and then where there were safe zones, say in Hawaii or different places in Europe, safe zones, they took this show over to entertain the troops who were stationed overseas. He served until the war was over and was honorably discharged. And this is Mr. Barclay dancing. He wrote articles in dance magazines. Oops, not too soon. But they decided to make a movie of This Is the Army Man. And that movie was going to star Ronald Reagan and many others. And just as it had on stage, it required, called for men to be dressed in drag. Well, one of the stars of this movie was Alan Hale, Jr., the skipper from Gilligan. So part of the movie required Alan Hale Jr. was a very large man, tall, and probably weighed 250, 260 pounds. Nelson Barcliffe had the job of putting Alan Hale in drag and teaching him to dance. Nelson Barcliffe said that was the hardest job he ever had. He said it's very difficult to put an elephant in a dress and teach him to dance. But the movie was a great success. He went on to star in Hollywood musicals and also starred in some westerns with John Wayne. And he was born right here in Hopewell. Riff Ruffin. Riff Ruffin was not born here in Hopewell, but he spent the majority of his adult life here. He married a young lady from City Point and raised 2 children here. Riff Ruffin was a star. He sang, and he got the name Riff because he could really tear up a guitar. Some of the songs that you may know that Riff Ruffin did: Peepin' in a Hat, Merry Christmas. He did several others. He played all over the country, in Hollywood, in New York, down in the Deep South, traveling with his orchestra and group. He also played with Little Richard, John and the DeWitts. He also played with Muddy Waters and B.B. King, and played all over the country. He would come back to Hopewell to visit his family. They lived over in Davisville, and he would come back here and play benefits concerts for Carter G. Woodson School to raise money for their athletic programs and their library. I love this one. Beyond Supper Club, West Broad Street, direct from Hollywood. Dine and Dance with Riff Ruffin and his orchestra. Richmond's finest food, and you only had to pay $1.50 to get in. But he was extremely talented. He decided later on that he did not want to be on the road anymore. So he retired, but spent the rest of his days playing music with others, teaching music to children over in the Davisville area, and doing concerts to raise money for the churches in his community. Very talented man. From right here in Hopewell. As you can see, Gravy Train, all that jazz and Christmas, a variety of records that Riff Ruffin and his band put out. And they were very popular. A lot of people listened and danced to them. And this is the one that when I went down to Burrisville, the people came up to me and said, "You have to study about this one." So I've just added her to the past little bit of time. Audrey Long, born in Florida in 1922 and died in England in 2014. And you think of, well, what did she have to do with this area? Well, Audrey Long father was the minister at Old Brandon Church in the late 30s. That's an extremely historic church. Back then, Episcopal ministers traveled a lot, and he was only here for about 5 years. But they lived in the rectory house out there, and Audrey was extremely tall, blonde hair, with hazel eyes. So I can imagine she probably set the little Burrsville community on fire. She attended the old Disputana High School. Later, after her graduation, the family was moved with another new ministry out to California. Well, Audrey was spotted, she was modeling, and she was spotted by RKO Pictures. As you can tell, she was extremely beautiful. When she was still a teenager, they began to put her in movies. She starred with John Wayne in westerns. She also starred with Steve Brody, Spencer Tracy. This was a Saturday afternoon serial westerns for the children, the Adventures of Gallant Bess. As you can see with Spencer Tracy, she was absolutely gorgeous. And she still kept in touch with some of the people in Burrsville. But she got tired of acting. Because they put a lot of stress on people at young ages. So she decided in 1960 to retire from the screen. She came back to Burrsville for a little bit and stayed for about a year. But she'd had a miserable marriage, but she met a man who was part Chinese, part British. His name was Leslie Chesterland. She married him. And what was really interesting about that is that he was the author of the books that some of you may remember about Simon Temple, the Saint. The TV show with Roger Moore that we watch sometimes. And she was influential in helping him write all those Simon Templar novels. She died, like I said, in England. He passed away before her. But I just recently heard that they're talking about doing a reboot of The Saint. So we may see Simon Templar on the TV again. Coming soon. Shining Stars Part 2. Like I said, there is no way with as many as I have found that I could do justice to them in one show. So next time, we'll be featuring, hello, Keith Horn, Cynthia Rowland, Ed Hatch, Thomas Day, the famous furniture maker, Steve Mapry, Billy Haynes, Sam Pinkleton, the newest one, Hayden Bryant, Sid Hudson, Veronica Cherry, Jody Ashworth, Jay Bohannon, Joseph Cotton, and James Woods. And then there's more. But I think we all should be extremely proud of the talent that has been produced in this area. Extremely proud of the educational system that has produced this talent. And the fact that a lot of this talent comes back and contributes to help the youth of our communities go for their dreams. And thank you all so much, and I've enjoyed myself. And if you have any questions or comments, or if you have some new stars, just let me know, and I will work on them. And thank you all.